Stellantis just blew up the entire auto industry, and right now, every major automaker, from Ford to GM to Toyota, is scrambling to respond. What Stellantis did in just the last few weeks has set off a chain reaction of panic, a full-blown price war, and a market meltdown nobody was prepared for. The moment this move hit the market, analysts called it the nuclear option, because Stellantis didn't just cut prices, they detonated them. It started quietly. Stellantis began slashing prices on Ram trucks and Jeep models at levels the industry hasn't seen in over a decade. We're talking 20%, 30%, even 40% off, depending on inventory and region. At the same time, they pulled a move that blindsided everyone. They cut production at key plants, issued warnings to suppliers, added massive incentives, and even began restructuring several divisions behind the scenes. And then came the kicker: rumors of ultra-cheap imported models and new low-cost manufacturing partnerships. Suddenly, Detroit realized Stellantis wasn't adjusting to the market. They were rewriting it. Ford and GM went into emergency mode. Toyota added unexpected incentives just to keep sales from slipping. Hyundai rushed to secure more fleet deals. The industry was caught completely off guard because Stellantis wasn't acting like a company trying to survive. They were acting like a company trying to crush the competition. But here's the real secret. Stellantis didn't go nuclear because they wanted to. They did it because they had to. Behind the scenes, Stellantis has been facing a massive internal crisis. Overproduction, bloated inventory, slipping EV demand, and frustrated US dealers begging the company to fix their collapsing sales numbers. Jeep and Ram lots were filling up faster than they could move units. EV sales were sputtering while Ford and Tesla stole headlines. Chinese automakers were putting pressure on global pricing. Something had to give, and Stellantis decided to pull the trigger before anyone else. And that's when the price war started. Ram trucks suddenly became the cheapest full-size pickups in America. Jeep models, once known for sky-high pricing, were now discounted so heavily that used car buyers started switching to brand new models. Incentives from Stellantis began spreading like wildfire through the industry. Within weeks, Ford slashed prices on F-150 trims. Chevy responded with aggressive Silverado discounts. Even Toyota, usually the last automaker to panic, quietly boosted incentives on Tundra and Tacoma. But here's the brutal truth: none of this is sustainable. Automakers are now selling vehicles at margins so thin they barely make a profit, some even taking losses just to keep factories running. That's why analysts say the US auto market has officially entered full chaos mode. Inventory levels are at record highs. Dealers are sitting on hundreds of days of unsold vehicles. Many are losing money even after applying manufacturer incentives. Banks are tightening auto loans because default risks are rising again. And customers, they're holding back, waiting for even bigger discounts, because they can sense the desperation. But Stellantis does have a long-term play here. While Ford is drowning in EV losses and GM is canceling future electric projects, Stellantis quietly shifted its strategy. No more EV-only future. Instead, they're doubling down on hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and ultra-cheap models designed to undercut everyone else. Their goal isn't to lead the EV race, it's to survive the EV disaster, and so far it's working. And then there's the part of the plan that's causing political shockwaves. Stellantis is using Chinese manufacturing and low-cost international partnerships to slash production costs to levels American automakers simply cannot compete with, while US companies spend billions on union labor, expensive factories, and EV transitions. Stellantis is quietly outsourcing, restructuring supply chains, and tapping into regions with dirt-cheap labor and massive production capacity. This has triggered outrage in Washington. Union leaders are furious, and other automakers are terrified because this cost advantage is what makes Stellantis' price war possible. The domino effect is already visible. Stellantis cuts led to Ford cuts. Ford cuts triggered GM cuts. And now analysts are predicting more layoffs, more plant closures, more canceled EV programs, and mounting fears of a 2025 recession hitting the auto sector hard. Many factories, especially those producing slow-selling SUVs and EVs, are now considered at risk. Automakers are quietly preparing worst-case scenarios behind the scenes. And all of this chaos hits Jeep and Ram the hardest. Jeep, once a powerhouse brand, is collapsing under oversupply and shrinking demand. Ram sales have been falling behind Ford and Chevy for months. Dealers are furious, customers aren't biting, and Stellantis knows they're running out of time. So they launched one last-ditch effort, a massive discount blitz to keep the brands alive, one that is now destabilizing the entire market. Experts are warning that this is just the beginning of a full auto market reset. Prices that were artificially inflated for years are crashing back down. Automakers built too many SUVs while buyers shifted to smaller, cheaper vehicles. EV hype faded faster than expected, triggering a domino effect across factories, suppliers, and dealerships. The next 12 months could bring even more chaos, bigger discounts, more layoffs, and a restructuring of the market, unlike anything we've seen since 2008. And for buyers, this might actually be the biggest opportunity in years. With automakers desperate for sales, customers can choose whether to buy now, wait for deeper cuts, or even lease at bargain prices. But knowing when to strike is the key, and this price war could save buyers thousands if they play it right. Because the truth is, the price war hasn't even reached its peak yet. Dealers are sitting on so much inventory that many are quietly whispering that December and January could bring the deepest discounts of the decade. Some insiders are even saying certain Ram and Jeep models could hit fire sale pricing that we haven't seen since the aftermath of the 2008 recession. But buyers need to be strategic because while prices are falling fast, banks and lenders are tightening up. Lower prices don't help if you can't get approved for a loan. And that's exactly what's starting to happen. Banks are looking at the auto market and seeing massive instability. They're worried about defaults spiking as people find themselves underwater on overpriced loans from the last few years. So lenders are pulling back, higher credit score requirements, tougher approvals, stricter income verification, and shorter loan terms. This means even as car prices drop, financing is becoming harder. And that's why many analysts are warning that this collapse could get worse before it gets better, because a price war plus a credit squeeze equals a perfect storm. Meanwhile, Stellantis is playing a completely different game behind the scenes. Their executives see the chaos as an opportunity to reshape their entire lineup. Instead of dumping billions into money-losing EV programs, they're focusing on what's selling: hybrids, low-cost models, and affordable family vehicles. They know that people are tired of paying luxury prices for basic transportation. They know that buyers want value again, and Stellantis wants to be the company that gives it to them. But this shift comes with consequences. Stellantis is quietly preparing to cut even more EV programs, delay new electric models, and scale back US production in favor of cheaper overseas plants. Ford is already suffering the consequences of doubling down on EVs too fast. GM is stumbling through wave after wave of EV cancellations and delays. Now Stellantis is positioning itself as the cost-cutting survivor while everyone else bleeds cash. The backlash, however, is growing. US politicians are furious about Stellantis' moves to use Chinese factories and global outsourcing to slash prices. Union leaders warn that American jobs are at risk. Major suppliers are in panic mode because Stellantis is aggressively renegotiating contracts. But despite the noise, Stellantis' strategy is working. Their vehicles are cheaper to build, cheaper to ship, and now cheaper to sell. And that's the exact formula that started this industry breakdown. Meanwhile, Jeep's identity crisis is accelerating the chaos. For years, Jeep relied on big markups, expensive trims, and brand loyalty. But customers aren't buying the hype anymore. Off-road SUVs aren't flying off the lots like they used to. Too many models, too many trims, too many price hikes. And now Jeep dealers are drowning in unsold Wranglers, Grand Cherokees, and Compass models. Stellantis had no choice but to slash prices, and that move is now dragging rival SUV prices down with it. Ram is facing the same problem. Once the golden child of pickup truck buyers, Ram is now losing ground rapidly. Ford and Chevy outsell them by a massive margin. Inventory piled up so fast that Stellantis was forced into emergency incentives. Dealers were begging the company to act, and now Ram trucks are among the biggest casualties of the price war. Buyers love the deals, but for Stellantis, the discounts are costing millions. All of this leads to one unavoidable conclusion. The American auto market is now moving toward a forced reset. Too many factories, too much inventory, too few buyers, and every automaker chasing the same shrinking pool of customers with the same overbuilt SUVs and trucks that people no longer want at inflated prices. Something had to break, and Stellantis was the first company willing to pull the trigger. So what should buyers actually do right now? If you're looking for a truck or SUV, especially a Ram, Jeep, Silverado, F-150, or Tundra, this winter might be the best opportunity in years. But if you wait a little longer, especially heading into early spring, you could see another wave of markdowns as automakers get desperate to clear out 2024 and 2025 models before production slows further. Leasing could become a powerful weapon for buyers too, because manufacturers will use it to mask losses and keep monthly payments attractive. But this is also a dangerous time. Some brands will cut production so drastically that certain models will vanish. Some dealerships may shut down entirely, and some buyers may get caught in the trap of buying too soon, only to see prices drop another 10 to 15% weeks later. The key is timing, leverage, and understanding how this price war plays out. At the same time, the political backlash continues to grow stronger. Lawmakers are accusing Stellantis of undermining American jobs by relying on Chinese manufacturing and cheap labor markets. Union leaders are furious that Stellantis is cutting US shifts while boosting overseas production. Economists warn that if the price war continues into next year, we could see federal intervention or new tariffs as politicians try to protect domestic automakers. But Stellantis is betting that by the time Washington reacts, they'll already have secured a dominant cost advantage, an advantage big enough to reshape the company for the next decade. Meanwhile, on dealership lots, the situation feels like a countdown. Salespeople are admitting privately that they've never seen so many unsold vehicles. Some lots look like storage facilities. Manufacturers are offering gigantic bonuses just to move units. And yet, customers are still waiting, still watching, still expecting deals to get even better. The standoff between buyer patience and automaker panic is turning into a pressure cooker that will determine where prices go next. And every signal points to one direction: deeper cuts, more incentives, and even harsher competition, because Stellantis has already shown they are willing to do whatever it takes to unload every Ram and Jeep they've got. And through all this, one question keeps emerging: how long can this price war continue before something breaks? Because automakers cannot survive selling trucks and SUVs at razor-thin margins forever. Dealers cannot survive months of negative profits. Suppliers cannot survive relentless cost-cutting. And consumers, while celebrating the discounts, may soon face a market where choices shrink as models are discontinued and factories shut down. What we are witnessing is not just a temporary correction, it is the beginning of a structural reset that will rewrite the American auto industry from the ground up, and Stellantis just lit the fuse. Luxury brands, once insulated from price turbulence, are quietly beginning to feel the shock. Dealers for brands like BMW, Mercedes, and even Lexus are reporting slower foot traffic, rising supply levels, and customers openly comparing luxury SUVs to heavily discounted Ram and Jeep models. When a fully loaded Grand Cherokee can be had for the price of a used RAV4, the entire value equation of the market gets distorted. Stellantis didn't just trigger a price war, they shattered the psychological ceiling that kept vehicle prices inflated for years. Now every automaker, even the premium ones, is reassessing what the real price of a car should be. Suppliers, meanwhile, are sounding alarms about the next crisis: production whiplash. Automakers ramped up production in late 2023 and early 2024, assuming strong demand, then only to slam the brakes this year. Factories that were operating at full capacity are suddenly running at half speed. Some parts manufacturers report order cuts of 20%, 30%, even 40%. These abrupt swings don't just disrupt profits, they destabilize the entire manufacturing ecosystem that keeps the US auto industry running. And Stellantis' aggressive shift toward cheaper overseas manufacturing is making the pressure even worse. Suppliers fear that once Stellantis fully commits to lower cost international production, those contracts won't come back. But in the middle of this storm, Stellantis is doubling down on its survival strategy. They're pushing forward with a wave of hybrid and plug-in hybrid launches specifically designed to undercut Ford, GM, and Toyota on price. They know buyers want better fuel economy without the price premium of full EVs. They know EV infrastructure is lagging, costing buyers time and anxiety, and they know that if they can occupy the space between gas and EV, they can win customers who feel trapped between two extremes. This is why Stellantis' upcoming models are being built to be cheap to produce, cheap to repair, and cheap enough to sell at prices the competition cannot match without losing money. Behind the scenes, industry insiders are now warning that fleet sales, once a reliable escape valve for excess inventory, are no longer enough. Rental companies are still cautious, government fleets are shifting to hybrids, and corporate fleets are trimming budgets. That means automakers can't dump thousands of vehicles into fleet channels like they used to, and Stellantis, by slashing prices first and hardest, has forced every competitor into this impossible battlefield. But the most important question buyers are asking right now is simple: how long will this last? Analysts say this price war could extend well into next year, especially if a recession hits or if interest rates remain high. None of those choices are good, and all of them lead to more instability. And if even one major automaker collapses under the pressure or is forced into a merger, that will send shockwaves through the industry for years. For now though, consumers hold the power. The deals will keep getting better, the pressure on dealers will keep increasing, and Stellantis will keep pushing the limits of how low prices can go, because they know every dollar of discount forces their competitors another step closer to the edge. The auto market has entered a new era, one defined not by record profits or record prices, but by survival, desperation, and the biggest reset the American car industry has faced in over a decade. And as this reset continues, the landscape for buyers is unlike anything we've seen in years. People who were previously hesitant to shop for vehicles are now entering showrooms with a new sense of confidence. They've realized that they hold the upper hand. For the first time in over a decade, the power has shifted from automakers to the consumer. Every discount, every incentive, and every trade-in bonus is a signal that automakers are competing aggressively for their business. But while this is good news for buyers, it also creates a high-stakes environment where timing is everything. Buy too early, and you may miss a deeper discount next month. The uncertainty is also forcing automakers to rethink their long-term strategies. EV programs that once dominated boardroom conversations are being reassessed, scaled back, or delayed. Ford and GM are scrambling to adjust, but they're trapped. Massive inventories, high production costs, and mounting labor expenses make aggressive discounts extremely risky. Meanwhile, Stellantis is using low-cost manufacturing and overseas partnerships to maintain its aggressive pricing without bleeding cash at the same rate. The company's ability to cut costs so efficiently is what's giving it an advantage in a market where margins are vanishing. At the dealership level, the pressure is palpable. Sales teams are being pushed to hit aggressive monthly targets, often with little room for negotiation margins. Some lots are running fire sale events multiple times per week just to move inventory and make space for new models. For buyers, this creates an unusual dynamic. The power to negotiate is at an all-time high, but supply is fragile. Many desirable models could disappear entirely if automakers continue cutting production in response to oversupply and shrinking margins. This is why industry insiders are warning that the next 6 to 12 months will be critical in determining who survives and who gets left behind. The ripple effect doesn't stop there. Used car values, which surged during the pandemic, are now dropping sharply in response to plummeting new car prices. Leasing residuals are under pressure. Loan-to-value ratios are tightening as banks brace for potential defaults. And small suppliers are increasingly vulnerable as automakers renegotiate contracts and shift production overseas. Every layer of the auto industry, from factory floors to dealership lots to financing institutions, is being reshaped. Stellantis' actions didn't just disrupt the market, they triggered a domino effect that will take years to stabilize. Consumers now have a rare opportunity, but it comes with risks. Those who navigate the market carefully can save thousands on trucks, SUVs, and family vehicles. However, patience and knowledge are key. The auto market is no longer predictable. It is reactive, volatile, and being rewritten in real time. And yet, despite all the chaos, one thing is clear: Stellantis has fundamentally changed the game. By forcing a price war, leveraging low-cost manufacturing, and prioritizing survival over hype, they've set the stage for a market-wide reset that no other automaker is fully prepared to handle. The next year will reveal which companies can adapt, which will be forced to retrench, and which may not survive the disruption at all. Stellantis didn't just shake the industry, they ignited a chain reaction that will define the US auto market for years to come, and every dealer, supplier, and consumer is now caught in the middle of the most chaotic period the market has seen in decades.